Alrighty, episode 5, Lethal Equipment. This episode should be pretty quick, so let's just get into it. I talked a lot about claymores already in my perks episode when I was talking about shrapnel and restock and E.O.D. So I don't really think I need to re-explain why these are good. I'll go through it quickly, I suppose. Claymores are definitely good. I mean, I'm basically either going to be running claymores or proximity mines. The reason claim so like let's just compare them to each other real quickly. So claymores are better than proximity mines in the sense that um, proximity mines. The problem with them is that if you are if you're fast enough, even if you're not using EOD, you can prone. Like if a proximity mine goes off and you hit the floor, you're gonna take very minuscule damage, but you'll never die even without EOD. Um, so that's a big problem with the proximity mines. So the claymores don't really have that problem because unless you angle the claymore and put it in a really bad spot to where the enemy won't trigger it, like if you put it really close to a door, there's a chance that the enemy could actually run past it and it won't like damage them or anything. But like I was explaining in the other episode, you're not really worried about the claymore doing damage per se or getting you kills. It's more about just knowing where someone is. So yeah, the claymore could go off and it won't hit the enemy, but at least you know someone's there because obviously a friendly is not going to trip your claymore. So that's one reason why the claymore is better. Sorry, I didn't really finish what I was saying. The claymore is better than the proximity mine because the chances of someone actually dodge, like if you're good at placing the claymores and you know how they work and the blast radius and whatnot, like it'll be fine. Like you can't like jump over a claymore or prone or whatever. You're gonna just have to eat it if you have EOD. um there are like you're not gonna be able to really react fast enough to like if you trip a claymore and then like back off or something, like that's why they're so instantaneous that it's almost impossible to even avoid them. Obviously the downside with the claymore is that the lasers are, I think it's a 90 degree, they the lasers only detonate within 90 degrees, maybe it's 45, I can't remember. So basically someone has to be right in front of it for it to go off, so obviously that means you have to place them more deliberately. Um, so we'll just go ahead and talk about the proximity mine since I was already talking about it. So the proximity mine, like I said, the problem with it is that since it bounces up in the air, you can prone and just completely negate it, completely. Um, but the biggest upside is that the proximity mine explodes in all directions. So, unless and again, all these like the proximity mine and the claymore, like I keep saying, is not about getting you kills. It's about knowing where enemies are. So that's honestly why I use the proximity mine more because it detects in all directions. So no one's gonna get past it. It'll always go off wherever you place it. Now, the other thing I like about the proximity mine more than the claymore is since you can put it anywhere you want, and it'll explode if somebody gets next to it. I like to hide them in grass. Like if there's like grass or if there's someone's body, I'll put the proximity mine in someone's body. Then you can't see it. With the claymore, you can see the lasers and they're pretty noticeable. Just the utility of the proximity mine is just so much better than the claymore. Another huge advantage with the proximity mine is that you can throw it, so you don't have to be where you want to put it. You can just like if you're up in a building and you want to like throw a proximity mine in the path to the building, you don't have to go downstairs and then put the claymore down and then run back to where you want to go. You can just throw it and then boom, you have just an explosion right there, just waiting. The proximity mine is just so much more like so when I was talking about in the other episode about how if if you're trying to kill EOD users, you can put down two proximity mines or two claymores, and since you can live one explosion but not two, you'll get a kill on them. So if that is my goal, if I'm actually trying to kill EOD users, I'll probably be running claymores, because you can't dodge them, and they're just more deliberate in killing. The proximity mine is less powerful in the sense that like the blast radius isn't like, I mean, if someone's tripping a proximity mine, they're probably gonna die if they don't have EOD. But like, I don't know. The proximity mine is less reliable for damage, but it's more there's more utility with it. But the claymore is more lethal, but there's less utility with it. Now, I run claymores on my shotgun class because since I'm using the shotgun, I'm going to be in close quarters anyway. So I'm going to be physically where I want to be. You know, like I was saying, where you have to deliberately be where you want to put the claymore down. I'm going to be in that situation anyway. And also, since I won't be camping around my claymores, but what I don't want to happen is that if in that scenario, like I'm going to be moving around a lot more with the shotgun, in the areas where I have it, so I don't want a proximity mine to go up and kill me by accident, like I was talking about in the other episode. So like the claymore will let me avoid that a lot more, to where my own proximity mine isn't going to get me killed. So that's more or less again, I think overall like 75% of the time I'm going to be using the proximity mine just because it's so much more effective in what I want to use it for. Um, I guess another downside is the claymore. The claymore is a lot faster to put down. The proximity mine is kind of slow, and it's really weird. I'm pretty sure this is a fact, but certain guns and like certain if you run the gun with certain attachments, it actually affects how quickly you throw the mine. Um, that's kind of irrelevant, but it's just a little weird thing I've noticed is that like depending on your like some with the AK, even with amped, it actually takes quite a while for you to actually throw the mine. But then there's certain guns where it's almost instantaneous. It's really weird. Maybe I'm just not not understanding that or something. But I'm almost certain that's it. But that's not something you really need to worry about. Just kind of a weird thing I noticed. So I think that's a pretty good explanation for both of those. So let's go to the frag grenade. The frag grenade, I would honestly say you just need to avoid completely. The problem with this game is that since E.O.D is in the game, a lot of the lethals are just bad. So the frag grenade has a lot more utility than the Semtex. It's kind of like the Claymore and the proximity mine. Like the frag grenade, you can bounce it. Like personally, I would probably be using the frag grenade if it wasn't for E.O.D because it is so effective. Because you can bounce it off walls, you can get it into certain buildings, you can cook the grenade by holding it in your hand before you throw it, which obviously is like an instant explosion if you're good at timing it. Like if in Call of Duty 4, all you had was a frag grenade. So, well, I mean, you could run other explosives, but they were perks. So like getting good at like bouncing grenades off walls and getting them into like certain angles and like cooking them so that by the time you throw them near the enemy, it's an instant explosion and they can't even react or throw it back at you. The problem is that like so the fuse on a grenade is 5 seconds. So that's 5 whole seconds you have to be holding that grenade and getting into the position that you want or taking the time to get in the right angle or something, and all that just for the enemy to be running E.O.D, making your frag completely like pointless because they're gonna stim back up and just have full health again. Like frags are just they're just bad, sadly. They're so I love frag grenades. They're so cool and like useful, but not in this game. They're honestly just completely terrible. I mean, even in an objective game mode, again, like there's just other better things. Like we'll just go ahead and talk about the Semtex since they're kind of the same. The obvious difference with the Semtex is that you can't bounce it off walls and you can't cook it, but the fuse is shorter and it obviously makes noise when you throw it, which is kind of irrelevant. That's not really important. I'm not really sure about the blast radiuses. I'm pretty sure they're the same. I think the frag grenades might be a little bit bigger. But obviously the advantage and what makes the Semtex grenade actually better is the spamminess of it. I think you actually can't throw the Semtex as far as the frag grenade, but I'm not entirely sure because I like literally never use either of these. The Semtex and the frag just aren't good. Again, the same reason with the frag that makes the Semtex bad is that someone can just be running E.O.D. So you take all that time by putting your gun away, throwing the grenade, waiting for it to explode, and then just somebody has E.O.D. and it's pointless. Obvious, and you know what? Another benefit with the Semtex is that you can stick people with it. And the advantage with this isn't like you don't want to rely on like sticking E.O.D. users with it, but why it's good is because if somebody's running a riot shield or something like that, you can instantly kill them by sticking their shield with it. And a frag grenade, you can't do that. So The Semtex is better than the frag grenade in this game, just overall objectively, I would say, but they're both bad because they don't perform the function of the claymores and proximity mines where they can just alert you to enemies and they don't kill anything. That's the problem. I mean, honestly, I would never even for any game mode, like these just aren't good. Like obviously if you want to like I don't know, if you're playing hardpoint and you want to throw a grenade into a hardpoint to get people scattered a little bit, I mean, sure, it's good in that regard, but honestly, the C4 is better for that, but we'll get to that in a second. So honestly, I would just completely not even use the frag grenade or Semtex. The Molotov is good because it basically closes off pathways. So yeah, this is very useful if you're playing an objective mode like domination. If you throw a Molotov on a flag, it's like, well, now the enemy's gonna, if they're not running EOD, they can't capture that flag, and if they are running EOD, they're gonna be taking constant damage. Now, I was talking about this when we were talking about restock and stims in the other episode. If you're running EOD, you can just sit in a Molotov and just stim over and over, and you can live the Molotov. But the difference with the Molotov compared to the thermite is that the Molotov actually lasts longer. So I'm pretty sure, like it doesn't happen very often, but I'm pretty sure by the time you actually outlive the Molotov, you'll be on red health and you won't be at full health like you can be with the thermite, because of the duration. And the Molotov, the Molotov just it lasts quite a while. It's like a good 7 or 8 seconds, which is a long time in Call of Duty. So it's a good weapon, but only for like hardpoint or domination. It's not good. It's not going to be good for like kill confirmed or something like that. So really, I mean, this is a niche. We're just going to leave it as a niche weapon. Um, some downsides is that obviously you have to be very deliberate where you throw it because like if you throw it on the wall, it's basically like useless. Like no one's because basically at that point, like the fire is not going to like explode around the wall very much. It kind of just sits there. So unless somebody's like literally touching the wall and touching the fire, they're not going to like take any damage or anything. But again, like the Molotov is a tactical piece of equipment in the sense that you're not going to be one of relying on it to get you kills. It's just to keep people off objectives. You don't want to be like, oh, I need to get kills with this thing. Like, no, that's not what it's used for. The C4s are again, they're just terrible. They're not. I literally like I never use frag C4s or Semtexes. Like they're just so bad. C4s, I would have to argue, are at least somewhat better. I would say better than the frag or the Semtex because, and I don't do this personally because I don't play Search and Destroy, but I could imagine that there are people that like, if you're trying to defend the bomb, you would put like C4s on the bomb or near it or something, and then like because you could run shrapnel with this. So if someone's trying to plant on the bomb, you could put two C4s near it and then explode it and kill them. Like there's more utility with the C4. You can stick it on surfaces. And this was more common in like older Call of Duty games where the meta with E.O.D wasn't as bad. Like for whatever, like I remember in Call of Duty Ghosts, like one of the most popular things to do was to just like you would run basically amped. I can't remember what the perk was in that game, but like you would basically run amped and then just hide behind a riot shield and then chuck a C4 really quickly and then double tap square to detonate it to get a bunch of free kills. It was really lame. You can't really do that in this game. The character doesn't throw the C4 very far at all. He basically just like it's like a little girl throw, honestly. And the time it takes for you to actually like detonate the C4. I want to say you have to wait until the C4 touches the surface. I don't think you can detonate in air. But I'm not entirely sure because like I literally never use C4. And hardly anybody does. Like it's honestly a blue moon when you see somebody running C4. But the same thing could be said again with domination. The cool thing about domination is that you can on the flags there's that little like bump on the base of the flag. You can actually hide. Like things can go in that little bump. It's kind of hard to explain if you don't know what I'm talking about. But like so like you could put a proximity mine in that little bump, or you could put two C4s. So like you could hide two C4s on the flag. And if somebody's like capturing it, and obviously if they haven't like destroyed them or like seen them or whatever, you can just like, oh, someone's capturing B flag, just double tap square and boom, you got a kill. You stop them from taking it. Or oh, someone's on B flag, but I'm on the other side of the wall, and like there's too many guys over there, so you can't kill them all. Well, you could throw two C4s over there and destroy them, but it takes too long. You have to physically be there. Unlike the frag and the Semtex, like you have to be so close to use the C4 as a grenade because you can't throw it very far. So I I guess I'm just gonna leave C4 as a niche for certain modes, like search and destroy. I don't know. C4s are just really bad. They're not very good. Um, I really don't have much more to say about it. Like, yeah, obviously you don't want to be using R1 to detonate the C4 because if you hit R1, well, first of all, if you're running shrapnel, you're gonna have to throw both of your C4s before you can detonate them. And when you do hit R1 to detonate them, your guy actually pulls out like a detonator and clicks it. You don't want to do that. You always want to double tap square because he doesn't pull out the detonator and it's instant. So you could, if you're running shrapnel, you could throw one C4 and then double tap square and blow that one up, and then you could throw another C4 and do it like that. So the C4 is just not very good. The throwing knife, I mean, I don't really need to talk about this. The throwing knife is like if you're running a riot shield or just trying to flex on people. There's no like practical use for it. It's just a cool thing to run. I really don't think I need to say anything about it. I mean, you can retrieve the throwing knives, like if you can physically get to them once you throw them. I mean, especially in hardcore, you don't have a reticle, and relying on your, ability to know where the middle of the screen is kind of difficult. And really, there's just no point. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the throwing knife is the throwing knife. Like, use it if you want, but it's not good. You know what I mean? So, especially since we have the thermite. The thermite is basically just a better throwing knife, if you ask me. I think you throw the throwing knife just a bit faster, like definitely faster. But the thermite is the throwing knife, except that it explodes and it burns people and it kills riot shield users. So the thermite is better than the Molotov, or excuse me, the thermite, well, the Molotov and the Semtex, because if you stick somebody with the Molotov, the Semtex, or the thermite, it'll kill a riot shield user. But the thermite is just so much better because you can throw it farther, you can throw it faster, it explodes and it burns. So if you're like basically if I see people running riot shields, I immediately switch to the thermite. It's also fantastic for killing juggernauts. Hopefully they're not running E.O.D, but it's still very effective. If you stick a juggernaut with a thermite, you're going to do a lot of damage to them and obscure what they're doing. So the thermite is it's really good. I mean, I would just rather run this than the frag or the Semtex because again, it's the fact that it detonates immediately. You throw it, and the moment it hits something, it explodes. The Semtex, you have to throw it, and you still have to wait for the fuse to count down. The frag, you throw it, you still have to wait. The Molotov, yeah, it immediately, explodes when it hits a surface, but it doesn't have an explosion like the thermite does. Now, the thermite doesn't explode. It just combusts, and then it starts burning. I was talking about this in the other episode. So the thermite is honestly one of the better pieces of equipment. So obviously, we don't need to talk about these three because they're literally just throwing knives. They have no difference. They're just throwing knives. So honestly, out of all of these, the only ones you want to use if you're like trying to win games is the thermite, the proximity mine, maybe C4 if you're playing search and destroy. I can't attest to that because I don't play that mode. The Molotov if you're playing domination, and the claymore. Honestly, the frag, the Semtex, the throwing knife, they're just not good. The claymore and proximity mine are obviously the best. The thermite is good. Like if you don't want to play the way that I'm talking about, you can use the thermite. But the problem again is that I should mention that with the thermite, like I said in the other episode, will not kill somebody using E.O.D. If you throw it near them and it explodes, it will not kill them. Now if you throw it near someone that doesn't have E.O.D, it will get you a kill, but you have to stick an E.O.D user for it to actually just kill them. Now, it's just E.O.D makes thermites really bad because you can hit them with the initial explosion and then hit them with the burn for like 2 or 3 burns and they're still alive. It's just thermites are good situationally. I'd almost say that they're niche. They're niche just like the C4 and the Molotov. So honestly, yeah, I'm just gonna say the proximity mine and claymore are god tier. There's no reason to not use them. And the Molotov, the thermite, and the C4 are niche. The Thermite's a little better than all of them, but yeah, I think that'll do for this episode. It was a little shorter. Again, once we get into actual gameplay, I should say that, like, once we actually get into me playing games and breaking down gameplay, a lot of this stuff will be more inherent, like, or apparent. I don't know what word I'm using. So, I'm just trying to lay out all the groundwork here and just kind of, because I don't want to be like focusing on all these things. I just want to be able to eliminate some things to say this is completely useless. We're not even going to worry about that. I'll explain why, and then when we get into the gameplay, you'll see why. So, all right, I'll see you all in the next episode.